Bartholomew. Hello everyone, we are Group 6 and this is the story of Bartholomew. Bartholomew started off as a humble, little two-wheeled cardboard robot. Bartholomew is too long, so I'll just refer to it as the robot. So one of the first problems that this robot faces is that the wheels are really flimsy because they're made of cardboard and it's not able to get past any obstacles. That's because the wheels are too small and the robot's too light. So because of these reasons, there's not enough friction between the wheels and the obstacles. That's why the robot isn't able to climb them on its own. In addition to those problems, there's also that thingy that drags on the ground behind the robot, so that adds a lot of friction. So moving on to our second prototype, the modifications we made were to improve the structure of the robot. So we decided to use acrylic for the wheels and the main body. The wheels were made to be bigger than the stock robot, which allows a shallower angle between the contact point of the wheel and the obstacle. Having a shallower angle allows you to reduce the amount of friction required to overcome the obstacle. Another modification that we made was to add 2 more wheels to the back, which would reduce the amount of friction by removing the thingy that drags on the floor, and that also increases the overall mechanical power of the robot. The final change that we made was to wrap the wheels with non-stick mats to increase the friction. I know it's getting a bit boring, so here you go. While the front of the prototype managed to go above and over the obstacle, the chassis eventually got stuck on the obstacle. This is because the distance between the front and the back wheels are too large compared to the distance between the chassis and the ground, resulting in the chassis to scrape against the obstacle, stopping it in its tracks. To prevent the chassis from coming into contact with the obstacles, we reduced the distance between the front and the back wheels. Furthermore, to reduce the weight of our prototype, we used 3 motors instead of 4. Additionally, we used an arm to deliver the ball over the wall, inspired by medieval catapults. With these modifications, we managed to make our prototype navigate through the obstacle, deliver the ping pong ball over the wall after stopping within 5 cm in front of it, and subsequently return back to the starting position. Okay, enough of that. So the robot did sometimes deliver the ball over the wall and complete the obstacle course, but it was quite inconsistent, and that's because of the long ass arm that we put on it. That made the center of gravity way too high and caused it to topple. In order to talk about the 4th prototype, I need you guys to watch a lecture first.
Maths educational video. Okay, so what I'll be teaching is square cube law. So the first cube, you have a cube with sides of length A, and the second cube, you have cubes with sides of length 2A. So you can say that the second cube was scaled by a factor of 2 for its length. But the interesting thing when you look at the volume is that it's scaled by a factor of 2 cubed. So what this means in the context of this project is that if you want to reduce the volume and subsequently mass of the robot, you have to reduce the dimensions of the robot as far as possible.
Thank you, Professor. Now I can finally talk about the 4th prototype. So our main goal was to create the lightest robot. So because of the square cube law, we wanted to make the robot as small as possible in order to make use of that principle. As for our material choices, we stuck to acrylic for the wheels because it was rigid enough and we didn't want to sacrifice rigidity for weight when it comes to the wheels. So for the chassis, we chose to use a mix of cardboard and foam core. So the top will be made of cardboard with the grain running longitudinally for stiffness in that direction, and the foam core would be underneath providing lateral stiffness. We also chose to use our batteries as counterweights to make our weight distribution close to 50-50, which would make going forwards and backwards through the obstacle course a lot more consistent. To further improve consistency, we moved the servo motor that controls the catapult arm to an elevated position so that all the catapult needs to do is basically lop it over the wall. This allowed the center of gravity to be more inboard and reduce the instability caused by the long arm that we used to have. So we used our 4th prototype for our first graded run, and for the second graded run, we used what we are referring to as the final robot. So the video that you're watching right now was our second graded run with the 5th version of our robot. The changes we made to the robot was to remove the breadboard, along with other weight savings, such as reducing the number of spokes on our wheels, as well as cutting off extra material. This brought the weight of our robot to 341 grams. That's all for the design process of our robot. So now, since we have time, here's a montage of our robot screwing up.